The message arrived on a cold Tuesday morning while Commander Ben Torres was reviewing supply reports in his small office aboard the orbital station. The seal of Earth's diplomatic corps glowed red on his screen, marking it as Priority 1. Ben set down his coffee and opened the encrypted file. Commander Torres, the message began in formal diplomatic language. You are hereby assigned to Mission Atlas 7. Report to Ambassador Chen immediately for briefing. This assignment carries the highest importance for humanity's future in the galactic community. Ben frowned. He was a military engineer, not a diplomat. His expertise lay in building things and fixing broken systems, not navigating the complex world of interstellar politics. But orders were orders. 2 hours later, Ben sat across from Ambassador Chen in the most secure briefing room on the station. The older woman's face was serious as she slid a datapad across the metal table. What do you know about the Zephyrian Empire? She asked. Ben searched his memory. They control 3 star systems in the Outer Rim. Very wealthy. They've been part of the Galactic Trade Federation for about 200 years. Correct. They're also extremely powerful and currently deciding whether humanity deserves full membership in the Federation. Ambassador Chen touched the datapad, bringing up images of tall, elegant beings with translucent crystalline skin. The Zephyrians communicate through color changes in their skin. It's how they show emotions, intentions, even complex ideas. The images showed Zephyrians in various states, their skin shifting from deep blues to warm golds to fierce reds. Ben had never seen anything like it. They're beautiful, he said honestly, and proud. Their culture values perfection, especially in their noble families. The ambassador's expression darkened. Which brings us to your mission. The Zephyrian Emperor has a daughter named Vela. She's the heir to their trading empire, worth more than most planets. Ben waited for the rest. She's also blind, born without sight, and unable to produce the color changes that are central to Zephyrian society. Her family considers her defective. That's horrible, Ben said, feeling anger rise in his chest. It gets worse. They want to arrange a marriage for her to a human. They believe this will solve 2 problems. First, they get rid of what they see as an embarrassment. Second, they gain access to human military protection for their trade routes. Ben's stomach dropped as he began to understand where this was going. The Federation has agreed to this arrangement because it guarantees humanity full membership and trading rights. You, Commander Torres, have been selected as the groom. For a long moment, Ben just stared at her. You want me to marry someone I've never met? Someone who's being forced into this just like I am. I want you to save humanity's future among the stars, Ambassador Chen replied firmly. This marriage is political, yes, but it's also an opportunity. The Zephyrians have technology and resources we desperately need, and perhaps you can make the situation better for everyone involved. Ben looked down at the datapad, scrolling through more images. One showed a young Zephyrian woman standing alone on a balcony. Her skin was a constant pale blue, unlike the shifting colors of others around her. Even in the picture, she looked isolated. What's her name again? Vela. She's 26 in human years, well-educated and by all accounts intelligent and kind. She's also never left her homeworld. Ben studied the image more carefully. Vela was tall and graceful, with the typical Zephyrian features, high cheekbones, large eyes, and that beautiful crystalline skin. But there was something in her posture that spoke of loneliness. When do I leave? He asked quietly. Tomorrow. The ceremony is in 1 week. The journey to Ethros, the Zephyrian capital world, took 3 days by fast transport. Ben spent the time learning everything he could about Zephyrian culture, language, and customs. He discovered that their color-changing ability was tied to their nervous system, emotions and thoughts literally painted across their skin for others to see. He also learned that Vela's inability to color change made her essentially mute in her own society. She could speak their language, but without the visual component. She could only communicate with other species or the rare Zephyrian who chose to use words alone. When the transport finally approached Ethros, Ben pressed his face to the viewport and gasped. The planet was covered in floating cities, massive structures of crystal and metal that drifted through the clouds like glowing islands. Each city pulsed with soft light that changed colors in slow hypnotic patterns. First time seeing a Zephyrian world? Asked Captain Mills, the transport pilot. It's incredible, Ben replied. How do they keep the cities in the air? Gravity manipulation technology that's about 1,000 years ahead of ours. They've offered to share it once humanity proves we're worthy allies. The transport docked at the largest floating city, and Ben felt his weight change as they entered the artificial gravity field. A delegation of Zephyrians waited for him in the docking bay, their skin shifting through formal patterns of greeting, deep purples mixed with gold. "Commander Torres," said the lead delegate, speaking in accented but clear English. "I am Minister Kale. Welcome to Ethros." Ben bowed in the manner he'd practiced during the journey. "Thank you for having me, Minister. I'm honored to be here." Minister Kale's skin flashed a quick green. Approval according to Ben's briefings. "The Emperor is eager to meet you. Your quarters have been prepared and the ceremony will take place in 3 days." As they walked through the crystalline corridors of the city, Ben marveled at the architecture. Everything seemed to be carved from massive gemstones, and soft light flowed through the walls like water. Other Zephyrians they passed showed curiosity in their skin patterns, colors shifting as they observed the human visitor. "Will I meet Vela before the ceremony?" Ben asked. Minister Kale's skin darkened slightly. "Tomorrow. There will be a formal introduction in the presence of the court." That evening, alone in his quarters, Ben stood on the balcony looking out at the sunset. The other floating cities drifted slowly around them, their lights beginning to glow brighter as darkness fell. He thought about Vela, somewhere in this same city, probably as nervous about tomorrow as he was. He'd volunteered for dangerous missions before, faced combat and survived equipment failures in the void of space. But this felt different. This wasn't just his life on the line. It was the future of his entire species, and the life of a woman who'd never chosen any of this. The next morning, Minister Kale escorted Ben to the formal receiving hall. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that seemed to stretch up forever into sparkling crystal formations. Hundreds of Zephyrians lined the walls, their skin alive with shifting patterns of color as they whispered among themselves. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform, sat the Emperor and his family. Ben recognized Emperor Thane from his briefings, a tall, imposing figure whose skin constantly shifted through deep, authoritative colors. Beside him sat the Empress, her patterns more subtle but equally complex, and standing slightly apart from them was Vela. Even at a distance, Ben could see the difference. While every other Zephyrian in the room displayed moving patterns of color, Vela's skin remained that same pale, steady blue. She stood perfectly straight, her head held high despite her blindness, but Ben could sense her isolation even from across the vast room. "Approach the throne," Minister Kale whispered. Ben walked down the long aisle, feeling hundreds of eyes on him. The Zephyrian's skin patterns shifted as he passed, some showing curiosity, others displaying what he was learning to recognize as skepticism or even disdain. He stopped at the appropriate distance from the throne and bowed deeply. "Commander Torres," Emperor Thane's voice boomed across the hall. His skin flashed with formal patterns as he spoke. "We welcome you to our world and our family." "Your Majesty," Ben replied. "I'm honored by your invitation and grateful for this opportunity to strengthen the bonds between our peoples." The Emperor's skin showed approval. "Indeed, this union will benefit both our races greatly." He gestured toward Vela. "Come forward, daughter." Vela moved with careful practiced steps toward her father. Ben watched her navigate the slight changes in the platform's surface without stumbling, clearly familiar with every inch of this room. When she reached the center, she bowed gracefully. "Vela," the Emperor said, his skin patterns becoming more formal and distant. "Meet your intended husband, Commander Ben Torres of Earth." This was the moment Ben had been both anticipating and dreading. He took a step forward, then another, until he was only a few feet from Vela. Up close, she was even more beautiful than her pictures had suggested. Her features were delicate but strong, and her pale blue skin had a subtle luminescence that seemed to glow from within. Her eyes, though sightless, were a deep violet color that seemed to hold depths of intelligence and hidden strength. "Lady Vela," Ben said softly, "it's an honor to meet you." She turned her head toward his voice. "Commander Torres." Her voice was melodious but carefully controlled. "Welcome to Ethros." The formal introduction continued with traditional ceremonial words that Ben had memorized. But as he spoke, he found himself studying Vela's face. looking for any sign of her feelings about this arrangement. Her expression remained perfectly composed, giving nothing away. The ceremony moved to its next phase, the ritual of first meeting, where the intended couple would share a formal handclasp, while the court witnessed their union being blessed by the ancestors. Minister Kale stepped forward with an ornate crystal bowl filled with silver liquid, a traditional blessing oil used in Zephyrian ceremonies. He offered it first to Ben, who dipped his fingers as instructed, then to Vela. Now, the Emperor announced, let the first bond be sealed. Ben extended his hand toward Vela. She lifted her own hand, searching the air slightly until her fingers found his. For just a moment, they stood with their hands almost touching, the silver oil glistening on their fingertips. Then their skin made contact. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. The moment Ben's fingers touched Vela's palm, her skin exploded with color. Brilliant waves of gold, silver, and rainbow hues swept across her entire body like aurora dancing across her crystalline surface. The colors were so bright and beautiful that several people in the audience cried out in amazement. But it wasn't just the visual spectacle. Ben felt something incredible happening, a rush of sensation unlike anything he'd ever experienced. For a split second, he could sense Vela's emotions as clearly as if they were his own. Her shock, her wonder, her sudden joy mixed with fear, all of it flowing between them through their joined hands. And Vela, for the first time in her life, she could see. Not with her eyes, but through the touch itself. Ben's emotions painted themselves in her mind like vivid landscapes. His nervousness appearing as storm clouds, his genuine kindness as warm golden sunlight, his determination as steady mountain peaks. Through their connection, she could sense the room around them, feel the amazement of the watching crowd, even perceive the crystal walls and soaring ceiling through Ben's eyes. The moment lasted only seconds before Vela jerked her hand back, gasping. The colors faded from her skin, leaving her pale blue once again, but now there were tears streaming down her face. The entire hall had fallen silent. Even Emperor Thane sat speechless, his skin cycling through patterns of shock and disbelief. It was the Empress who found her voice first. "The Cromark's touch," she whispered, and her words carried clearly in the shocked silence. It's been 300 years since any Zephyrian could produce such displays. Ben stood frozen, still feeling echoes of that incredible connection. He looked at Vela, who was trembling slightly, her hands pressed against her chest as if she was trying to hold on to the sensations she'd just experienced. "What just happened?" Ben asked quietly. Minister Kale's skin was cycling through rapid patterns of excitement and fear. The legends speak of Zephyrians who could see beyond sight, who could touch the very essence of other beings. They were called Cromarks, spiritual leaders who guided our people for thousands of years. "But that's impossible," Emperor Thane said, his skin showing deep skepticism. "Vela cannot even produce basic color changes. She's extraordinary," Ben interrupted, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. "What I just felt, what she just did, that wasn't defective. That was incredible." Vela lifted her head, and for the first time since Ben had met her, she turned directly toward him as if she could see him clearly. "You felt it too?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Ben said honestly. "I felt everything you were feeling. And somehow I think you could see through my eyes." The court began to buzz with conversation, skin patterns flashing rapidly as the Zephyrians discussed this unprecedented event. Ben heard fragments of words in their language, some excited, some frightened, some angry. Emperor Thane raised his hand for silence. "This changes nothing," he declared, though his skin patterns showed he was far from certain. "The ceremony will proceed as planned. Guards escort them both to their quarters. We will continue tomorrow." As they were led from the hall, Ben managed to stay close to Vela. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. She nodded, but he could see she was still overwhelmed. "I've never felt anything like that before. For just a moment, I could see the whole world through your emotions. It was beautiful and terrifying. We need to talk," Ben said. "Privately when we can." "Yes," she agreed. "There's so much I need to understand." They were separated at the corridor leading to the guest quarters, but as Vela was led away, she turned back toward Ben one more time. Even without the ability to see him, she seemed to look directly into his eyes. "Ben," she said, using his first name for the first time. "Thank you. For what?" for being the first person to ever make me feel like I wasn't broken. As Ben watched her disappear down the crystal corridor, he realized that everything had changed in those few seconds of contact. This wasn't just a political marriage anymore. Something incredible had been awakened between them, something that could change not just their lives, but potentially the entire relationship between their species. He also realized that they were probably in great danger. The reactions in the court had made it clear that not everyone was pleased by this development. Some saw opportunity in Vela's awakened abilities, but others clearly saw threat. Ben had come to Ethros expecting to fulfill a duty. Now he found himself at the center of something much larger and more complicated than anyone had anticipated. And at the heart of it all was a remarkable woman who had just discovered she was far more powerful than anyone had ever imagined. The real challenge was just beginning. That night, Ben couldn't sleep. He paced his quarters, replaying the moment when he'd touched Vela's hand. The memory was so vivid he could still feel the echo of her emotions flowing through him. He'd experienced combat, spacewalks, and near-death situations, but nothing had prepared him for that connection. A soft knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Ben opened it to find a young Zephyrian servant whose skin showed nervous purple patterns. "Commander Torres," the servant whispered. "Lady Vela requests your presence in the Crystal Garden. She says it's important." Ben followed the servant through winding corridors he hadn't seen before. They descended several levels, moving away from the main palace areas into quieter sections of the floating city. Finally, they emerged into a breathtaking space. The Crystal Garden was exactly as its name suggested, a vast enclosed area filled with growing formations of living crystal in every color imaginable. Soft light emanated from within each formation, creating a gentle, colorful glow throughout the space. The air hummed with a barely audible musical tone. Vela stood at the center of the garden, her hand resting on a tall pillar of blue crystal. When Ben approached, she turned toward him with that same uncanny accuracy she'd shown earlier. "You came," she said, relief evident in her voice. "Of course. Are you all right? That scene in the throne room must have been overwhelming." Vela's skin flickered briefly with pale gold before returning to its usual blue. "I've been coming here since I was a child. The crystals sing, and I can feel their vibrations. It's the only place I've ever felt truly at peace." Ben moved closer, careful not to startle her. "The servant said you needed to see me urgently." "We're in danger," Vela said simply. "I've been listening to the palace conversations all day. Some members of the court see what happened between us as a sign that I might challenge the current power structure. Others think you're some kind of human sorcerer who's corrupted me." "What do you think happened?" Ben asked. Vela was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the crystal pillar. "I think you unlocked something that was always inside me. The ancient texts speak of Chromarks who could sense the true nature of other beings, who could guide our people through their ability to understand emotions and intentions. And you think you might be one of these Chromarks?" "I don't know. But Ben, when I touched you, I didn't just see through your eyes. I felt your memories, your hopes, your genuine concern for me. I've never experienced anything like that connection." Ben stepped closer. "Can we try again? I'd like to understand this better too." Vela hesitated. "It might be intense. And if someone sees us, it could make things worse politically. I'm willing to risk it if you are." Slowly, Vela extended her hand. Ben reached out and gently took her fingers in his. The moment their skin connected, the effect was even stronger than before. This time, Ben was more prepared for the rush of shared sensation. He could feel Vela's wonder and curiosity, but also her deep loneliness and fear of being rejected again. Through their connection, she experienced his memories of Earth, vast blue oceans, green forests, the feeling of rain on his face. But something else was happening too. The crystals around them began to glow brighter, responding to Vela's awakened abilities. Her skin erupted in patterns more complex and beautiful than anything the court had witnessed that morning. Waves of silver and gold flowed across her arms and face, punctuated by brilliant streaks of emerald and ruby. "The crystals are responding to you," Ben said in amazement. "I can feel them," Vela whispered. "They're alive in a way I never understood before, and through your touch I can sense so much more." They stood connected for several minutes, both marveling at the experience. But eventually, footsteps in the corridor forced them apart. The crystals dimmed, and Vela's skin returned to its pale blue state. Minister Kale emerged from the corridor, his skin patterns showing urgent concern. Lady Vela, Commander Torres, you must return to your quarters immediately. There have been developments. What kind of developments? Ben asked. Religious factions within the Empire have heard about this morning's events. Some believe Vela's awakening signals the return of the old ways and want to declare her the new Cromarch immediately. Others consider it heresy and are calling for the marriage to be cancelled. Vela's skin flickered with worry. What does my father say? The Emperor is trying to maintain neutrality, but pressure is building from all sides. There are also reports of ships gathering at the system's edge. Whether they're coming to protect or attack isn't clear yet. As they walked back through the palace, Ben noticed increased security. More guards patrolled the corridors and he saw officials huddled in urgent conversations. The political situation was deteriorating rapidly. Minister Kale, Ben said, what exactly does being a Cromarch mean? In ancient times, the Cromarch was our highest spiritual authority. They could read the emotional truth of any situation and guide our people toward harmony. But the position has been empty for 3 centuries because no one has demonstrated the necessary abilities. Until now, Vela said quietly. Perhaps, but claiming such a title would require proof beyond what happened today. The religious council would demand demonstrations of wisdom and spiritual insight that go far beyond color changing. They reached the residential section of the palace, and Minister Kale bid them good night with worried patterns flickering across his skin. Ben was escorted to his quarters, but as he prepared for bed, he heard commotion in the corridor outside. Loud voices argued in the Zephyrian language, growing more heated by the moment. Ben cracked his door open and saw several robed figures confronting the guards outside Vela's room. The blind one cannot become Cromarch, one was saying in accented English. It is against all tradition. The crystals responded to her touch, another argued. That has not happened in living memory. Human trickery, the first speaker spat. Their kind corrupts everything they touch. Ben had heard enough. He stepped into the corridor, his military bearing making the robed figures step back slightly. Gentlemen, he said calmly, I think this discussion would be better held in daylight, don't you? The lead figure, an elderly Zephyrian with skin that shifted through angry red patterns, fixed Ben with a hostile stare. You should not be here, human. Your presence has already caused enough disruption. I'm here because your Emperor invited me, and I'll continue to be here as long as Lady Vela needs protection from people who can't see her value. The confrontation might have escalated, but Captain Rask, the head of palace security, arrived with additional guards. The religious protesters were escorted away, but their hostility left an uncomfortable tension in the air. The next morning brought worse news. Reports came in of demonstrations in several of the floating cities. Some groups demanded that Vela be recognized as the new Cromarch, while others insisted the marriage, to a human, was a betrayal of Zephyrian purity. Ben was summoned to a private meeting with Emperor Thane. The ruler's skin showed deep patterns of stress and uncertainty as he paced his private office. Commander Torres, the Emperor began. I will speak plainly. What happened yesterday has created a situation I did not anticipate. Half my advisors want to crown my daughter as a spiritual leader, and the other half want to exile her. What do you want, Your Majesty? Emperor Thane stopped pacing and looked directly at Ben. I want to do what's best for my people and my daughter, but I'm no longer certain what that is. May I offer a suggestion? Please do. Let Vela demonstrate her abilities publicly. If she truly has these Cromarch powers, let her prove it in a way that settles the question once and for all. The Emperor's skin showed interest mixed with concern. That would be extremely risky. If she fails publicly, it could destroy her completely. And if she succeeds, it changes the entire structure of our society. Sometimes change is necessary for growth, Ben said. In my experience, the biggest risks often lead to the most important breakthroughs. Their conversation was interrupted by urgent knocking. Minister Kale entered with alarming news. Your Majesty, we've detected armed ships approaching the system. Intelligence suggests they belong to the purist faction, extremists who want to prevent any human influence in our society. Emperor Thane's skin flashed deep red with anger. How many ships? At least 20, possibly more. They'll reach the outer defense perimeter within hours. Ben felt his military training kick in. Your Majesty, I need to know about your defense capabilities and the layout of this system. Why? Because I've spent my career protecting things that matter. And right now that includes your daughter in this city. The next several hours passed in intense preparation. Ben worked with Captain Rask to assess the city's defenses while Vela spent time in meditation, trying to understand and control her new abilities. When the purest ships arrived, they demanded the immediate expulsion of all humans from Zephyrian space and the cancellation of the marriage. Emperor Thane refused, leading to a tense standoff. That evening, as reports came in of more extremist groups gathering across the Empire, Vela made a decision that surprised everyone. "I want to address the entire Empire," she announced at an emergency council meeting. "If people are going to make judgments about me and my abilities, they should at least know who I really am." "Daughter, that's incredibly dangerous," the Emperor protested. "Father, I've been hiding my whole life because I couldn't do what others expected. Now I have abilities I never dreamed possible. Maybe it's time to stop hiding." Ben felt pride swelling in his chest at her courage. "I'll stand with you," he said. "As will I," Minister Kale added, his skin showing determined blue patterns. The Imperial broadcast was scheduled for the following evening. Word spread quickly across all the floating cities and throughout the Empire. It would be the first time many Zephyrians had seen their blind princess speak publicly. The Great Hall was reconfigured to accommodate broadcast equipment, and representatives from religious factions, political groups, and military forces gathered to witness whatever would happen. As the appointed time approached, Ben found Vela in the Crystal Garden, surrounded by the softly glowing formations that had become her sanctuary. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. "I don't know if anyone could be ready for something like this, but I know I can't keep pretending to be less than I am just to make others comfortable." Ben extended his hand. "Would it help if we were connected during the broadcast?" Vela considered this carefully. "It might. Your strength and clarity have been helping me understand my own abilities. But Ben, if we do this together, there's no going back. Everyone will see that our connection is real, not just political." "I'm not going anywhere," Ben said simply. They walked together to the Great Hall, where hundreds of Zephyrians waited with skin patterns showing every emotion from excitement to fear to anger. The broadcast equipment hummed quietly, carrying their signal to millions across the Empire. Emperor Thane introduced his daughter with formal words, but Ben could see the worry in his skin patterns. Vela stepped forward to the speaking platform, her hand still joined with Ben's. "My people," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall and across the broadcast network. "I stand before you today not as your blind princess, but as someone who has discovered that what makes us different might also make us strong." As she spoke, something beautiful began to happen. Her connection with Ben allowed her to sense the emotions of everyone in the hall, and her skin began to respond with patterns that reflected their feelings back to them. When she spoke of unity, warm gold flowed across her crystalline surface. When she addressed their fears, understanding purples mixed with reassuring blues. But more than that, her words carried a wisdom and insight that came from her unique perspective. She spoke of seeing beyond sight, of understanding that true vision came from connection and empathy, rather than just physical perception. "The humans have taught me something important," she continued. "They don't see me as broken or incomplete. They see potential where others see limitation. Maybe that's exactly what our empire needs, the ability to see beyond our old assumptions about perfection." The response from the watching crowd was mixed but powerful. Many showed approval in their skin patterns, moved by her words and the unprecedented beauty of her chromatic displays. Others remained skeptical, their patterns showing resistance to change. But the real test came when an elderly religious leader stood up in the audience. "Lady Vela," he called out. "Words are beautiful, but the ancient tests for Cromark require more than speeches. Can you truly read the hearts of those around you?" Vela squeezed Ben's hand, drawing strength from their connection. "Approach me, Elder Zine, let me show you what I've learned." The old Zephyrian walked slowly to the platform. His skin showed careful neutrality, but through her enhanced abilities, Vela could sense the deeper currents of his emotions. "You're testing me," she said gently, "but underneath your skepticism, I feel great love for our people and genuine hope that I might be worthy of their trust. You've spent 60 years serving in the temples, watching for signs of the Cromark's return. Your caution comes from wisdom, not doubt." Elder Zine's skin erupted in surprised golden patterns. Everything Vela had said was accurate, including details about his service that few people knew. Furthermore, Vela continued, you're worried about your grandson Tam, who has been struggling with traditional color speech. You see in him the same challenges I faced, and you wonder if acceptance of my differences might help him find his own path. The elder's eyes widened. His grandson's difficulties were a closely guarded family secret. You carry grief for your late partner Zen, who believed the Chromarch would return in their lifetime. You wish they could see this moment. By now, Elder Zine's skin was cycling through patterns of amazement and growing conviction. He turned to address the watching crowd. She speaks truth, he declared. No one outside my family knows these things. This is indeed the sight beyond sight that marks the true Chromarch. The hall erupted in discussion as the implications sank in. Through the broadcast, similar reactions spread across the Empire. The demonstration had been undeniable, but the celebration was short-lived. Captain Rask rushed into the hall with urgent news. Your Majesty, the Purist fleet is moving toward attack position. They're demanding immediate surrender or they'll begin bombardment of the city. Ben's military instincts took over. How long do we have? Maybe an hour before they're in range. Emperor Thane's skin showed grim determination. Ready our defenses. We'll protect the city and my daughter's right to choose her own path. Wait, Vela said, her skin bright with sudden inspiration. What if there's another way? She turned to address the crowd and the broadcast audience. My people, we face a choice. We can fight to defend old ways of thinking, or we can choose to grow together. I ask every Zephyrian watching this to make your voice heard. Show the Purists that our empire is stronger when we embrace change instead of fearing it. What happened next surprised everyone. Across the empire, ordinary Zephyrians began broadcasting their own messages of support. The communications networks lit up with calls for peace and acceptance. Even some members of the Purist fleet began defecting, choosing unity over division. Within hours, the extremist attack had crumbled as their support evaporated. The majority of Zephyrians had chosen to embrace their new Chromarch and the possibilities she represented. In the weeks that followed, Vela's official recognition as Chromarch transformed not just Zephyrian society, but humanity's role in the galactic community. Her partnership with Ben demonstrated that humans possessed a unique ability to help other species unlock their hidden potential. The marriage ceremony, that had begun as a political arrangement, became a celebration of genuine partnership. Ben and Vela stood together as equals, their connection serving as a bridge between their peoples and a symbol of what could be achieved through understanding and acceptance. As they exchanged vows in the Crystal Garden, surrounded by formations that sang with joy and reflected the brilliant patterns of Vela's enlightened skin, Ben realized that sometimes the most important missions were the ones you never saw coming. And Vela, seeing the world through their shared connection, understood that being different had never been her weakness. It had always been her greatest strength.